Consumer prices rose 8.5% in March, just slightly hotter than expected, and the highest since 1981. Well, hello there, my friends. Chris Marcus here with you for Arcadia Economics. On Tuesday, April 12th, we had another inflation report out, clocked in even above Wall Street's expectations of 8.4%, and the actual number came out 8.5%, which we'll see if Greg Liller of Sierra Madre Gold and Silver and also Silverfest 2 fame, where is helping us identify the top spots in the world where one would go to look for silver. We'll dig in, Greg. Hopefully, maybe you could help me understand if 8.5% inflation is high, especially relative to a 2% inflation mandate. And I think it's fun because you mentioned before that you've been doing this for quite a while. So you were around to see some of the fireworks back in 1980. I was too at that point. So either case, lots to talk about on a CPI hyperinflationary Tuesday. And welcome on in, Greg. How are you today?
Pretty good, Chris. Thank you for having me on.
Well, it's a pleasure to see you again. It was fun talking silver with you at Silverfest almost half a year ago now. And before we get started, why don't you just give people a quick rundown of your background, some of the things that you've done and your experience in the silver industry so they can know from the long list of experience you're speaking from, and then we can dig into some silver topics and the inflation and more.
Well, I've been at this for 40 some odd years now. And I've been fortunate. I've had 7 of my babies, as I call them, projects I played a significant role in, become mines. Some of them pretty big. The Ocampo mine was 16,000 tons a day from an open pit and 1,200 tons a day from an underground. And that was one I managed from the very first drill hole all the way up through production. I've been working in silver since the early 80s. I even was funded at one point, one of the companies, by the Hunt brothers. So yeah. It was quite interesting. And the inflation numbers, I think we've just gotten started. I mean, I remember the 70s, and it was just a slow, steady climb up to what we peak out at, 18%, something like that. I mean, it's not something they're going to get under control anytime fast. At least not the people that are in power right now.
Well, that's what I had come up with on my analysis as well. It doesn't seem like that will be the case. Although CNBC reporting that even despite that hyperinflationary print, that stocks rebounded on the hope that inflation is peaking. Now, that's one of those things that I hope I have 6-pack chiseled abs by the time I go to the beach behind me later today. I'm not sure how realistic that is. Because here you see consumer prices rose 8.5% in March, just slightly hotter than expected, and the highest since 1981. So, Greg, I mean, what else can I say except you just mentioned you were part of a silver company during those days. So anything that you could share about that, what's happening now, how you would compare that to what you lived through and being a part of the industry back in 1980, I think would be fascinating for people to hear.
I think from an economics point of view, difference back then was the U.S. didn't have the debt that they have now. And the U.S. has never turned on the printing presses like they have now either. So it's, to me, a lot of this is just uncharted territory. But no, when silver booms, you get multiples on your money pretty quickly.
Yeah, and what was that like in 1980? Because we know about the spike in the silver price, yet not as much. It's not as easy to find records or stories of what happened with the stocks, but certainly in an environment where people are seeing the inflation, the money printing, the debt, as you mentioned. And again, let's be clear, this is not to guarantee this is exactly how it will happen this time, but just as what drew me and many others to the silver space, should something like that indeed manifest, can you talk about what happened with the stock prices as the silver as a commodity was spiking?
I don't know if I can put any numbers on it, but I do remember that. I mean, the NASDAQ back then was really a resource oriented exchange. And I mean, there seemed to be an awful lot of 10 baggers occurring during that period of time. I mean, it was really heady. The money available for the exploration work, like I do, was just phenomenal. It's nothing close to today's nothing close to what it was then. So no, again, I think there's more uses for silver nowadays too. So no, I think the stocks, the resource stocks, especially with all this green energy stuff, they're all gonna boom. They have to. Metal prices across the board have just been going up, and they'll continue to go up. You've got what, 100 million ounces or more of silver being used in just solar panels every year. No, I think I hope we're right at the beginning of a bull market.
Well, you would think so, because like you mentioned, almost every other metal, I mean, gold is at its very close to its all-time high. You mentioned copper, and you have experience there. Copper, I mean, basically actually sat and looked at through a series of charts last week, and it was amazing how much all of them are up, except for silver. And you mentioned some of the issues of some of these exchanges. I mean, we've seen for the last couple of weeks that the nickel situation hasn't looked so good. And then yesterday there was a story, warning bells sound in the London metal zinc market. Again, now you saw it in 1980. You saw also a spike in silver, 2011. You have experience with uranium. And now we're seeing in nickel, zinc. Having lived through a few of these, any thoughts on some of these commodity markets now and what you're personally looking out for?
Seems to me like the mainstream media, if you will, they're always behind the curve on recognizing, I won't say a bad situation, but recognizing that there's a problem.
Yeah.
I mean, the nickel one was pretty evident. I mean, given its uses in the batteries and whatnot, that there was going to be an issue there. But it's not until a real obvious crisis happens that the CNBCs of the world kind of wake up to something.
Yeah. And do you think that's? No, I'm sorry. Continue. I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, it's just and back to the 80s when silver really skyrocketed. I mean, the Hunt brothers had achieved what they set out to do. They had cornered the market. What they hadn't counted on was the exchanges and the government regulators changing the rules in the middle of the game on them.
Which is the unfortunate part. Now, I've convinced, at least myself, I've seen enough that the exact same thing happened. This time, I mean, we'll leave 2011 aside, but Silver Squeeze weekend of February of last year, where later we find out the commissioner of the CFTC, who I provided evidence to, of, hey, here's something, there's a sequence of events here that were not what I was led to believe was in the scope of the law during my trading days. and then later to find out the commissioner of the CFTC is saying, hey, we had to tamp down the price to avoid what would have been a much worse situation, which to me is interesting because he was really pointing out that the government is very concerned about silver. This isn't just, the silver bugs saying, yeah, they're worried about silver, that's why they manipulate it. But that was stunning to me that he confirmed that. So, we're seeing some similar things happen now as happened in 1980. And I'm curious, how do you see this ultimately resolving? I would think at some point nature has to take over, although when you have a government price cap, again, in your experience, how does that normally play out?
Well, if I had a crystal ball, I'd just be sitting on the beach, that beach back behind you. And I would have retired for the fourth time. Yeah, I just.
Well, you could come here and fly your silver chopper Ben that will be auctioning a few of these babies off right on over to the beach. So it's even better than crystal when you think about it.
Yeah, no, I don't. Pessimistic in my old age, but for the metals, I see things being very rosy. I'm not optimistic for the future overall. I think it's people have to be prepared for some unpleasant surprises to come. I mean, inflation, I think, it's just gotten started. I mean, how are they going to chew through all those trillions of dollars, excess dollars that were printed? Yeah, I don't know. I try to keep my nose to the grindstone and go find new mines.
I hear you. I mean, if we were doing any sort of backing, you'd have to find a lot of mines. There's the balance sheet, which we hear about tapering, withdrawing, this and that. Fed's going to, give everybody teddy bears and rebate checks. Yet here we are. Are we over 9 trillion? Oh, darn close. There's the debt clock you mentioned, over 30 trillion. I don't hear any plans on how that is going to be addressed. Although fortunately, in the midst of all of that, you are finding a way to do silver projects. Not easier when the cost of a lot of the products that you use and all the metal or whether it's just inflation of labor or anything are going up. But what is it like when you have to manage a project in those type of environments?
Actually, the drilling prices that we're paying now with Sierra Madre are very close to what I was paying 10 years ago, surprisingly enough.
Yep.
I've been very happy with the bids. I have heard, though, that mining equipment is getting to be very difficult to order. And you want something, you better put your orders in now for scoops and haul trucks and whatnot, because it's just getting to be hard. The lead time is starting to draw out quite a ways.
And in terms of, we've seen these disruptions in many supply chains. Now, at least based on what the US president is saying, we're supposed to be concerned about disruptions to the food supply chain, which doesn't sound good. And certainly I can understand with the things that are happening, that would be logical to keep in mind. In terms of the silver supply chain, though, where the numbers say we're in a deficit for a couple of years, not getting easier to find silver, even with the technology we have. A lot of told by geologists and miners that most of the easy deposits have been found. What can you say about the silver supply and demand? Does it seem like it balances out? Are we short on silver? Is there a gap somewhere that's going to need to be accounted for? Or obviously the price we can't know, but how does that stack up based on what you're seeing right now?
I don't see where the excess supply is going to be coming from. I mean, the silver byproduct that comes out of a lot of these big copper porphyries, a lot of those are on their last legs. They're getting to be at the end of their lifetime, and I don't see any big new ones coming online. So it's, I'm just not sure who's doing these calculations and how they're doing it, I guess. The other thing I've found too that's kind of interesting is you look at the production numbers for silver, and let's just say I'm producing a concentrate. Okay, well, I report that I produced so many ounces of silver. Well, I sell that concentrate to another company who reports, well, I'm producing so many ounces of silver. That also includes the ounces that I sold to them. And there's a lot more of that, I think, going on than what people recognize.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of double counting going on, is what I'm getting at.
I think you're right, because if someone does a private deal and doesn't send something through the COMEX, I mean, especially when you look at some of the list of characters I've read about in the metals industry, we'll leave some of them nameless, but it's not the most like straightforward chain of command in many of these things. So, and I appreciate you mentioning also how most of the silver does come as a byproduct from these other mines, because especially as I try and figure what on earth is the Fed thinking with what they're doing, I wonder if their plan to address inflation is just they're going to raise interest rates and do so much damage to business that people won't be able to afford things, and that in their mind is somehow a means of managing the situation. Yet even if you have that happen, that means a lot of these other industrial producers, they're going to be producing less copper, zinc, lead, you would think, which means that even in a recessionary environment, it's still not straightforward. All right, people are going to use less silver because there's at least reason to believe, based on history and economics, that silver production would fall as well. Would you agree with that? Am I phrasing that right? Is that fair what I said there?
Actually, I got your raising interest rates comment got me sidetracked a bit, because I don't see how they can raise interest rates. How can the Fed raise interest rates when the debt's so high? I mean, the amount of money needed to service that debt. From what I've read, there's now enough tax flow money coming in to service the debt, and only Social Security and Medicare. All the rest of the cost of government's going towards more debt. How are they going to raise interest rates? Because then all of a sudden the T-bill interest rates go up. I don't think they can do it this time.
Joe Biden doesn't comment on that.
Yeah, no.
Otherwise, they don't comment on it either.
I don't hear anybody commenting on it, but how can you raise interest rates when you're going to raise the amount of interest the government has to pay out to service the debt? It just, it's a vicious circle we're in now. All of which I think bodes well for both silver and gold.
I think so. And then, it's fascinating. You get the dynamics. These guys are trying to hold on to the power of their dollars. So the plunge protection team gets in and tamps it down and intervenes like they do, which, is a lot of, it's like a lot of moving pieces to figure out, yet quite theatrical in its own way. And yeah, what the Fed is really thinking, it seems like it's a scheme that can only go on for so long. It's yet at the same time recognizing how long it has gone on for and just being able to wait patiently. With that said, for a lot of the people who do get into gold and silver, obviously they turn to some of the mining exploration stocks. And again, you are part of Sierra Madre Gold and Silver. So people becoming familiar on the show here with Sierra Madre, but perhaps you could share your perspective, and for people who are into the gold and silver stock investments, what you guys have been up to lately.
Well, Alex Langer and myself and our partners started Sierra Madre, about 5 years ago as a private company. The idea being that we didn't really see a new entrant into the junior, hopefully mid-tier space coming about. So we patiently looked for properties. Our first one that we acquired was the Tepic project, which is in southern Nayarit, state of Nayarit, Mexico. I should say I focus on Mexico. I've been very lucky and successful with Mexico. Hold on just a sec. For whatever reason, the silver endowment of Mexico is just phenomenal. So it's a good place to work. Like I said, we got our Tepic project. We went public with that one. And then last year, we managed to acquire a project I'd had my eye on for quite a while, the La Tigra project, which is, we did a deal with Grupo Mexico. And Grupo is a large conglomerate. They own the lion's share of Southern Copper, which is one of the largest copper producers in the world. And so the gold aspect, the gold projects, they really weren't doing anything with. So we kind of hope this is the first of a long relationship with Grupo. They seem to be very happy with what we're doing. So, and our idea is to become a producer. A lot of the juniors out there, they have a business model that we'll drill it out and somebody will come and buy it for hundreds, billions of dollars, hundreds of millions, billions of dollars from us. But that doesn't happen that often. My experience has been with my projects, they weren't purchased until they were in production and had been totally de-risked. So we've got a different viewpoint, different business model than a lot of our peer group, if you will, have.
Yeah, it's interesting what you mentioned there, because I think there's a degree where a lot of speculation that, you know, a lot of these bigger companies are going to be looking for smaller projects, yet not always so cut, dried, and simple. So thank you for touching on that. Again, it's interesting as we have the map here. I'm over in Mazatlan, so not too far from La Tigra project. And again, when we did Silverfest down there in Puerto Vallarta. So Greg, one last question before we wrap up today, and perhaps then you can apply this to Sierra Madre as well. But with all the experience you've had, and as long as you've been doing this, for people, whether it's investing in silver or for the people who do get into the gold and silver stocks, what's something that most probably would have never thought of, but in the time that you've been doing and seeing all sorts of different situations, you could leave folks with that would be a good thing to keep in mind as we see these inflation reports each month?
What's going to replace silver? You don't have anything that can replace it. There's substitutes. They don't work as well in terms of the some of the industrial uses, but it's always been a monetary metal on top. And so,
yeah, I think that's one of the reasons that drew me to silver even more so than gold, where you have it being consumed. And you know, I think there's a great case for gold, but you know, that industrial component with silver. And Greg, I'll show you something here that I'm not sure if you've seen yet, but it's quite stunning. These are some of the cryptocurrencies that are out there, and not that I'm going to say there can't be use or good ones, but just Here's the fifth largest one, a $50 billion market cap. We're told there's about 2 billion ounces of silver in investment grade form at 25 bucks. So, I mean, that's the entire stash of silver we're looking at. Some of these cryptos, which, maybe there will be great credence to some of them, hopefully, but just to put in perspective, well, how small the silver world is, and then even a lot of these stocks very small in addition to that. So I think it's quite astute what you're saying there.
Yeah, crypto, I don't understand. I mean, I can't help but think that there's an awful lot of really good hackers out there trying to figure out a way to get into these blockchains and steal it. And I think it's just a matter of time before somebody really throws a monkey wrench into that, because it's nothing but a bunch of zeros and ones, right? It's a charged or not charged. And like I said, I just can't help but think that there's hackers out there trying to figure out a way to take advantage of it. Silver,
Yeah.
on the other hand, it's something you can hold.
Yeah, and I think certainly, again, I can see some credence into a crypto where it's like, if you look at Visa or MasterCard, to the degree there's some utility or functionality there. Yet certainly in the environment, where we're seeing bank accounts frozen in Canada, where we see the US, they just sanction anyone that says the word Russia. So, again, great reason to be diversified in all these choices. I'm learning my lesson where, if even I may have had the crown for a little while of world's biggest silver bug, which I think in its rightful place in context, silver is great, and perhaps that's what I'll take away from a lot of the comments you shared today, is just kind of mixing that in, understanding what you're getting, and then factoring that in appropriately. And along those lines, Greg, one last time before we wrap up, if folks would like to find out more information, to see if Sierra Madre Gold and Silver is a fit for them, or have a financial advisor call you, what is the website, as I pull up the contact page again here?
Yeah, what is it?
Sierra Madre Gold and Silver.com.
.com.
Yes, he's too busy finding the good stuff to even dial into the website. But Sierra Madre Gold and Silver in the link in the description field below. Thank you, Greg, for joining me on this day where we see another inflation print, and at least making some sense of it, sharing your experience, and look forward to hearing how things go with the projects.
Well, thanks. And like everybody to look at our recent drill results that we just posted out today. I'm quite happy with those.
And we will have the link to that in the description field below. And thanks again, and we'll talk to you soon, Greg.
Thank you, Chris. Take care.